Hi, it's Miss Wright. I'm back with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We're on chapter 6, and we're going to do our bean flavor challenge later on in this chapter when Harry gets to experience them for the first time. And I got a few other things I want to show you today as well, just as we're going along. The journey from platform 9 3/4. Harry's last months with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was not scared of Harry, now scared of Harry. He wouldn't stay in the same room, while Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it was empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, he didn't. Uh, it did become a bit depressing for a while. Harry kept in his room with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he found in a history of magic. His school books were very interesting. He lay in his bed reading late into the night. Hedwig swooped in and out of the open window as she pleased. It was it was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come to vacuum anymore, because Hedwig would bring kept bringing back dead mice every night from before he went to sleep. Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper that he had pinned to the wall, counting down to the 1st of September. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King Cross Station the next day. So he went down to the living room where they all were watching a quiz show on TV. He cleared his throat and let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon? Uncle Vernon grunted to show that he was listening. I need to be at King Cross Station tomorrow to get to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. What, would it be all right if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to the wizard school, the train. Magic carpets. All got punctures, have they? Harry didn't say anything. Where is this school, anyways? I don't know, said Harry, realizing that for the first time he pulled out the ticket that Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he read. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There's no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Barking mad, the lot of them. You'll see. You just wait, all right? We'll take you to King Cross. We're going to London tomorrow anyways, or I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley here to the hospital. Gotta have that tail removed before he goes to smelting, growled Uncle Vernon. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station with his wizard robe. He'll change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he was needing. Saw that Hagrid was safely tucked in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge, heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and then they set off. They reached King's Cross At 10:30, Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a cart and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought that it was strangely kind of Uncle Vernon until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platform with a nasty grin on his face. Well, there you are, boy. Platform 9 and platform 10. Your platform should be right there in the middle, but yeah, you see, but they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? Quiet, right as quiet, right. He was quite right, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform and a big plastic number 4 over over the one next to it. In the middle, nothing at all. He have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away, all three of them laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard even heard hadn't even heard of Hogwarts, and when couldn't tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, asked for the train that left at 9 o'clock, but the guard said that there wasn't one. In the end, the guards uh, strolled away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying harder not to panic. According to the large clock he over the arrival boards, he had 10 minutes to get on the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it, but was stranded in the middle. He was stranded in the middle of the station with a trunk he could hardly lift and a pocket full of wizard money and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something. You did to he had to do, like tapping the third brick to the left to get into Diagon Alley. He wondered if he could get. He should go to. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the bricks at the ticket inspector stand between the platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to four boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of them, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his cart after them. They stopped, and so did he, and just near enough to hear what they were saying. Now, what's the platform number? Said his brother. 9 3/4. Piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. Mom, can't I go? You're not old enough, Jenny. You not now. Be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first. What looked like the oldest boy marched towards the platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched carefully, not to blink too easily. In case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the divided barrier between the two platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last backpack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. Harry, or Fred, you're next, the plump woman said. I'm not Fred, I'm George, said the boy. Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother? Can't you tell I'm George? Sorry, George, dear. Only joking. I'm Fred, said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done so, because a second later he was gone. But how had he done it? Now the third boy was walking briskly towards the barrier. He was almost there, and then suddenly he wasn't anywhere. There was uh, nothing else for it. "Excuse me," Harry said to the plump woman. "Hello, dear," she said. "First time to Hogwarts? Ron's new, too." She pointed at the last and youngest of the sons. He was tall, thin, and gangly, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. Yes, said Harry. The thing is, I just don't know how to get onto the platform," she said kindly, and Harry nodded. "No worries," she said. "All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between 9 and 10. Don't stop, and don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best to do a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on now before Ron." Uh, okay," said Harry. He pushed his trolley around and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it, people jostling him on their way to platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into the barrier, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his cart, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The cart was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to the platform, packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the barrier had been, with the words "platforms 9 3/4" on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted at one another in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriers were are, the first few carriers were already packed with students, some hanging out the windows to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his cart off down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, "Gran, I've lost my toad again." "Oh, Neville," he heard the woman sigh. Which boy? A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. Give us a look, Lee. Go on." The boy lifted the lid of his box in his arms, and the people around him snickered and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy arm. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave the trunk towards the train. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. Want a hand? It was one of the red-haired twins he'd followed through the barrier. "Yes, please," said Harry, panting. "Oh, Fred, come over here and help," the twin yelled. Uh, the twins helped Harry. Harry's trunk was the last trunk away. Sorry, was at last tucked away in the corner of the compartment. "Thanks," said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. "What's that?" said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. "Blimey," said the other twin. "Are you?" "He is," said the first twin. aren't you?" he added to Harry. "What?" said Harry. "Harry Potter," chorused the twins. "Oh, him?" said Harry. "I mean, yes, yes, I am." The boys gawked at him, and Harry felt himself turning red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating through the train's open door. "Fred, George, you in here?" "Coming, Mom." With a, with a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could see the red-haired boy family on the platform and hear what they were saying. Their mother had just taken out her handkerchief. "Ron, you've got something on your nose." The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began to rub the end of his nose. "Mom, get off!" He wrinkled free. "Ah, has Icky Ronnie got something on his nose?" said one of the twins. "Shut up." "Where's Percy?" said their mother. "He's coming now." The oldest boy came striding into sight. He had already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny silver badge on his chest with the letter P on it. "Can't stay long, Mother," he said. "I'm up front with the prefects. Have to go. We've got 2 compartments to ourselves." "Oh, are you a prefect, Percy?" said one of the twins uh, with an air of surprise. "You should have said something. We had no idea." "Hang on, I remember him saying something about it," said the other twin. "Once or twice. A minute all summer." "Oh, shut up," said Percy, the prefect. How come Percy gets new robes anyway?" said one of the twins. "Because he's a prefect," said their mother fondly. "All, all right, dears. Well, we'll have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there." She kissed Percy on the cheek, and he left. Then she turned to the twins. "Now you two, this year, you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or blown up a toilet, we've never blown up a toilet. Great idea though, Mom. Thanks." "That's not funny," she told them. "And look after Ron. Don't worry, Icky Ronikins is safe with us." "Shut up," said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. "Hey, Mom, guess what? Guess who we saw on the train?" Harry leaned back quickly so they couldn't look for him. "You know that black-haired boy near us on the station? Near us in the station? Know who he is?" "Who?" "Harry Potter." Harry's head. Harry heard the little girl's voice. "Oh, Mom, can I go on the train and see him, Mom? Oh, please." "You've already seen him, Jenny," said the and the poor boy isn't something to goggle at in a zoo, is he? Uh, is he really, Fred?" "How do you know?" "Ask him. Saw the scar. It's really there, like lightning." "Poor dear. No wonder he was alone. I wondered. He was ever so polite when he asked how to get on the platform." "Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what who looks like?" Their mother suddenly became very stern. "I forbid you to talk to him, Fred. No, don't you dare. As though he needs to remember reading that on his first day of school." "All right, keep your hair on." A whistling sound. "Hurry up," their mother said, and the 3 boys clambered onto the train. They leaned out the window for their for her to kiss them goodbye, and their youngest sister began to cry. "Don't, Jenny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat." "George, only joking, Mom." The train began to move. Harry saw the boy's mother waving, and their sister, half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed, and she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses, uh, houses flashed by the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know he was going where he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind. The door to the compartment slid open, and the youngest redhead boy came in. "Anyone sitting there?" he said, pointing to the seat opposite of Harry. "Everywhere else is full." Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry and took a look quickly at the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he was he was still he still had the mark on his nose. "Hey, Ron," the twins were back. "Listen, we're going down to the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there." "Right," muttered Ron. "Harry," said the other twin, "did we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley. And this is Ron, our brother. See you later, then." "Bye," said Ron and Harry. The twins slid the compartment door shut behind them. "Are you really Harry Potter?" Ron bursted out. Harry nodded. "Oh, well, I thought it might have been one of Fred and George's jokes, and have you really gotten, he pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his bangs to show the lightning scar, and Ron stared. "So that's where you know who?" "Yes, but I can't remember it," said Harry. "Nothing?" said Ron eagerly. "Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else." "Wow," said Ron. He and stared at Harry for a few moments. Then he realized what he was doing, and he quickly looked out the window again. "Are all of your family wizards?" He asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him. Yeah, I think so," said Ron. "I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him." "So you must know loads of magic already. The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the Pell Boy in Diagon Alley was talking about." "I heard you went to live with Muggles," said Ron. "What are they like?" "Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt, uncle, and cousin are, though. I'd wish I'd had 3 wizard brothers." "5," said Ron. For some reason, he looked gloomy. "I'm the sixth in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say that I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy, and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's the prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot. They get really good marks, and everyone thinks that they're really funny. Everyone except me. Uh, to do. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's not a big deal because they've already done it first. You never get anything new either. With 5 brothers, I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat." Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat gray rat, which was asleep. "His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy's got an owl from my dad for making when he made a prefect, but they can't afford. I mean, I got Scabbers instead." Ron's ears turned pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much because he went back to staring out the window. Harry didn't think he said anything wrong with not being able to afford a now. After all, he'd never had money in his life until a month ago, and so. He told Ron so not have all about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting proper birthday presents. The seemed to cheer Ron up. And until Hagrid told me I didn't know anything about being a wizard or anything about my parents or Baltimore. Ron gasped. What? Said Harry. You said you know whose name? Sounding both shocked and impressed. I'd thought of all people. I'm, tr- I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name, said Harry. I never knew you shouldn't. See what I mean? I've got loads to learn, I bet. He added, voicing for the first time something that he had been worried about lately. I bet I'm the worst in our class. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families, and they learn quickly enough. While they while they had been talking, uh, uh, the train had carried them out of London. Now, there they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep, and they were quiet for some time, watching the fields and the lanes flicker past. Around 12:30, there was a great chatter outside in the corridor, and a smiling woman slipped back the door and said, "Anything from the cart, dears?" Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears turned pink again, and he murmured, uh, that's he'd brought sandwiches." Harry went out into the corridor. He had never had money for candy with the Dursleys, and now he had a pocket rattling with gold and silver. He was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry, but the woman didn't have any Mars bars. What she did have instead was Bertie's every flavored bean, Dribbles' best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, liquor swans, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze knots. Ron stared at Harry as Harry brought all the things back into the compartment and tipped them into an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches inside. He pulled one of them apart and said, "She always forgets that I don't like corned beef." "Stop you for one of these," said Harry, holding out a pasty. "Go on. You don't want this. It's all dry. She hasn't got much time, with the 5 of us." "Go on, have a pasty," said Harry. And the other boy, uh, "Go on, have another pasty," said Harry, who had never had anyone uh, to share before anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling, sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all of Harry's pasties, cakes, and candies, the sandwiches laid aside forgotten. "What are these?" Harry asked Ron, holding up a package of chocolate frogs. There was uh, They're not really frogs, are they? He started uh, to feel that nothing would surprise him. "No, but see the card. See the card in them. I'm missing Agrippa." "What? Oh, of course you don't know. chocolate frogs have cards inside them, to collect. Famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I don't have Agrippa or Tamale. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half moon glasses, had a long, crooked nose, and flowing silver hair, beard, and mustache. Underneath, underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. So this is Dumbledore. Don't tell me you've never heard of Dumbledore. Can I have a frog? I might get Agrippa. Thanks. Harry turned over the card and read Albus Dumbledore, current headmaster of Hogwarts. Certainly considered one of the greatest wizards of the modern times, Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and ten-pin bowling. So I'm going to pause the book here. And my husband and I went to Universal in Orlando, Florida, and they have a Harry Potter selection. And when we were there, we were able to get some chocolate frogs. We don't have, we've eaten our chocolate frog now, but it's just a chocolate shaped frog. In the Harry Potter movies and books, the frogs actually hop. But they do, these are the cards that they're talking about. So we have Helena Helga Hufflepuff. So they kind of move. They look 3D here. They actually move. The picture actually moves in there. And then what I just read to you was what was on the back of Dumbledore's card. And it's kind of like a description. But these are like their trading cards. So like their Pokemon cards or whatever the cool cards are today. So I just wanted to share that with you so you kind of got an idea of what he was eating and what it kind of looked like. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. He's gone. Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day, said Ron. He'll be back. No, I got Magoria again. I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start a collection. Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs, wanting to be unwrapped, or waiting to be unwrapped. Help yourself, said Harry. But the Muggle world, people stay put in their pictures. Do they? What? What, they don't move at all? Ron sounded amazed. Weird. Harry stared at Dumbledore, sliding back into his picture on his card, and gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witches and wizard cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off of them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and McGonagall, but at least 5 other ones, including Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from them to open a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. You want to be careful with those, said Ron, warning Harry. When they say every flavor, they mean every flavor. You got all the ordinary ones like chocolate or peppermint or marmalade, but then you have the bad ones, the spinach and liver. George reckoned he had a booger flavored one once. Ron picked up a green jelly bean, looked at it in carefully, and bit into it. Ugh! See, Brussels sprouts. but they had a good time eating the every flavored bean. Harry got toast, coconut, baked beans, strawberry curry, grass, coffee, sardines, uh, and was very brave enough to nibble the end of a funny gray one that Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. I had one of those the other day. It was okay. So right now we're going to go ahead and do our. So here's my thing. This is we also got these when we went to Universal, but I'm going to pull out a couple, and I guess I'll do a couple today. All right. So these two look the same. I bet you they're going to be the lemon ones. I like those. I'm going to set those aside. I might eat those later. But these I have not had before. Pull out my guide. See what they are. Let's see. This one is either butter, which I don't like the flavor of, rotten egg, may even be earwax. Maybe butter wouldn't be so bad. Okay, here we go. Oh, nope, that's rotted egg. Oh, that was pretty bad. All right. Okay, well, I'll try this other one. This one is either cherry or cinnamon or earthworm. It's red. That one's cinnamon. That one's much better. I'm usually not a cinnamon flavor, but it's much better than the rotten egg. The rotten egg is horrible. All right. So we'll go on and get reading our passage. This our book. The countryside, now flying past the window, was becoming wilder. The nearest fence had gone. Now there were only woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of the compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on the platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. "Sorry, but have you seen my Toad at all?" When they shook their heads, he wailed, "I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me." "He'll turn up," said Harry. "Yes," said the boy miserably. "Well, if you see him," and he left. "Don't know why he would be so bothered," said Ron. "If I had thought a toad, if I had brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could, mind you. I brought Scabbers, so I can't really talk." The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. He might have, um, he might have died, and you won't know any difference," said Ron in disgust. "I tried to turn him yellow yesterday, to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I know. I'll show you. Look." He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered looking wand. It was chipped with pieces of something white that glistened at the end. Unicorn hairs, nearly poking out anyway. Uh, he had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he was with a girl. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one," she said. She had a bossy voice about her, lots of bushy brown hair, and a rather large uh, front front teeth. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. "Oh, are you going to do magic? Let's see it then." She sat down, looked at Ron, and he was taken back. All right." He cleared his throat. Sunshine daisies, mellow, turn this stupid fat rat yellow. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbard stayed gray and fast asleep. Are you sure that's a real spell? Well, it's not a very good one if it is. I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft that there is. I've learned all of all of this, of course, by books, and I know them all by heart, of course. I just hope that it's will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you? She said all of this very fast. Harry looked at Ron, and he was relieved to see that his stunned face that he hadn't learned all the course books by heart either. I'm Ron Weasley, Ron muttered. Harry Potter. Are you really? Said Hermione. I know all about you, of course. I've gotten a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magic history, and in a rise and fall of dark arts, and great wizard events of the 20th century. Am I? Said Harry, feeling dazed. Goodness, you don't know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me, said Hermione. Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I'm hoping I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds like the very best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyways, we'd better go look for Neville's toad. You two better get changed, you know. I expect we'll be arriving there soon. And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. Whatever house I'm in, I hope she isn't in it, said Ron. He threw his wand back in his trunk. Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud. What house are your brothers in? Gryffindor, said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling in on him again. Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad. But imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house vault. I mean, you know who was in. Yeah, said Ron. He flopped back in his seat, looking depressed. You know, I think the end of Scabbers' whiskers are lighter a bit, he said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off the house. So, what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left, anyways? Harry was wondering what a wizard did when he finished school. Charlie's in Romania studying dragon, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts. Did you hear? Said Ron. About Gringotts? That's it's been all over the Daily Prophet, but I suppose you don't get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high security vault. Harry stared. Really? What happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad said it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get around Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when things like this happen because in case it's just you know who behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get prickle of fear every time you know who was mentioned. He supposed this would be part of entering the magical world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Baltimore without worrying. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't have any, Harry confessed. What? What? Ron was dumbfounded. Oh, you wait. It's the best sport in the world. And off he went, explaining all about the four balls and the positions of the seven players, describing famous games he'd been and he'd been to with his brothers, and the broomsticks, as though and the broomsticks, and especially the one that he'd like to have if he had the money. He had been taking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open again, but this time it wasn't Neville. It wasn't Neville, the Toadless boy, or Hermione Granger. Uh, Three boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Munkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. "Is it true," he said, "they're all saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's true, is it?" "Yes," said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick set and looked extremely mean. Standing on either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. "Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle," said the pale boy, carelessly noticing where Harry's eyes had looked. "And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snicker. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think it's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all about the Weasleys having red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find that some wizard families are much better than other, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. "I think I can tell who's the wrong sort for myself, thanks," he said coldly. Draco Malfoy didn't get red, but a pink tinge appeared on the boy's pale cheeks. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter," he said slowly. "You'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you." Both Harry and Ron stood up. "Say it again," Ron said. His face was red as his hair. "Oh, you're going to fight us, are you?" Malfoy sneered. "Unless you get out now," Harry said, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than he and Ron. "But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all of our food, and you still have some." Goyle reached for the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leaped forward, but before he'd so much touched Goyle set out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his fingers. Sharp little teeth sunk into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers around and around, hollering, and when Scabbers finally went off and hit the window, all three of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought that there were more rats lurking among the sweets, or perhaps they had heard footsteps behind them because seconds later Hermione Granger had come in. "What has been going on?" she said, looking at the sweets all over on the floor, and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. "I think he's been knocked out," Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. "No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep." And so he had. "You've met Malfoy before." Harry explained about the meeting in Diagon Alley. "I've heard of his family," said Ron darkly. They were some of the first to come back to our side after you know who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He said Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go to the dark side. He turned to Hermione. "Can we help you with something?" "You better hurry up and put on your robes. I've just been up to the front and talked to the conductor, and he said that we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there. Scabbers has been fighting, not us," said Ron, scolding her at once. "Would you mind to leave while we change?" "All right. I only came in here because uh, outside are behaving like childish are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors," said Hermione with a stiff voice. "And you got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?" Ron glanced at her as she left. Harry peered out the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and put on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short. You could see his sneakers underneath them. A voice echoed through the train. We uh we will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately." Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed in their pockets the last of the sweets and joined the crowd in the corridor. The train next slowed down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out on the tiny onto the tiny dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the head of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years, come over here. All right, right here. All right there, Harry." Hagrid's big, hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. "Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step, now. First years, follow me." Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down this what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark dark on either side of them that Harry could thought there must be thick trees. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffled once or twice. You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in just a second," Hagrid called over his shoulder. "Just round this bend over here." There was a loud ooh, and the narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake, perched atop a mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was the vast castle with many towers. No more than four in a boat," Hagrid called, pointing to the fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. "Everyone in?" shouted Hagrid, who was in a boat by himself. "All right, then, forward!" And the fleet of the little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. "Heads down!" yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff, where they over, uh, bent bent their heads, and the little boats carrying them went through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliffs. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle until they reached a kind of underground harbor, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. "Oh, you there! Is this your toad?" said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them. "Trevor!" cried Neville blissfully, holding up his hands. Then they clambered up the passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto the smooth, damp grass, right in the shadows of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front doors. Everyone here, everyone here, you there, still got your toad? Hagrid raised a giant fist and knocked 3 times on the castle doors. All right, that's the end of chapter 6. We will look at chapter 7 again on Monday. I hope you have a great day. This has been Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, chapter 6. Have a great weekend.